Hello, in this video we're going to deploy a Contactzilla address book to Android devices using Soti Mobicontrol. If you've deployed a Contactzilla address book to iPhones before, the Android flow is slightly different. With iOS, contacts are deployed directly using a configuration profile, and on Android, because Card DAV isn't built in, we use a small sync connector app called Contactzilla Sync that runs in the background and delivers the contacts into the device's native Contacts app. So the overall flow looks like this. In Contactzilla, we will create an Android configuration file for our address book, add the Contactzilla Sync app from managed Google Play, and in that same app policy, we paste the values from our Contactzilla configuration profile and assign the policy to our Android device group. From the user's point of view, the result is simply that the contacts appear in the native Android Contacts app. I'm going to assume that you're already using Soti with Android Enterprise, and that Managed Google Play is already set up, and you have some Android devices already enrolled in a device group. And as you can see here, I have a device group set up called Skyline Field Devices Android with a couple of Android devices in there. So let's switch over to our Contactzilla dashboard, and here we are. I've opened up the Contactzilla address book I want to deploy, and I've clicked on Device Connections. The first thing I'm going to do is select Android from the drop-down here for connection type. The next step is to assign the connection to a team member. So in Contactzilla, you can assign a connection directly to any team member, and that's useful if you just want to get contact onto that person's phone individually. They can scan a QR code and set it up themselves very easily. But for MDM rollouts, we use a special kind of user called an MDM user, which is a device-only account. So let's create one now. I'll head over to Team Members and add an MDM user, device-only access. The email address here is arbitrary, so you can put anything in there. Hit Add, and that's done. You'll see that MDM user added here under Team Members. Let's head back over to Device Connections, and I'm going to select that new MDM user that we just created. Label Sync, I'm just going to leave as the default setting. And now decide on the access level for the end users. So for most managed rollouts, full read-only is a popular choice because it prevents any accidental changes to your master contact list. You can, of course, do a full read-write rollout, giving the end users the ability to edit contacts. And if you do select that, we have a handy feature just here to give them that editing capability, but still prevent them from deleting any contacts. And I do want to touch on selective read-only because it's a very useful feature. You don't have to send the entire address book to every device. Instead, you can choose one or more labels, and only the contacts with those labels are deployed to the devices. So if I just add a couple here and hit create, you can see my selective read-only rollout is here ready to go. But I'm going to go with a read-only. And finally, you want to set the number of device connections to match your rollout and then click create. And under the new device connections, I will click setup and download the Android profile we can deploy directly in Soti. So we're back in the Soti dashboard now. We're going to start by adding the Contactzilla Sync app from managed Google Play and configuring it with the values from the JSON file we've just downloaded. So let's go to Policies, and we're on the Apps tab here, and we'll click New App Policy in the top right. Hover over Android and choose Android Enterprise. Give the app policy a name. I'm going with Contactzilla Sync Install Android. And then click on the Apps tab, Add New App. Under the Managed Google Play apps, pick your enterprise binding from the dropdown and choose Next. Now I already have Contactzilla Sync showing up here, but if you don't, you just need to add it by clicking the plus icon here and searching for Contactzilla, clicking through and selecting the Contactzilla Sync app. So mine's already been done. I'll tick the box next to the app and choose Next. Select the app on the left-hand side, and most of these settings we will leave as is. So everything on this page, and under installation options, I'm leaving that as default. I want a mandatory install on any devices that are in my chosen group. Managed app config we're going to come onto in just a minute, and under app permissions, set the default permission policy to allow. This makes sure the Contactzilla Sync app is automatically granted the permission it needs, such as access to contacts, the ability to write to the native Contacts app. For managed deployments, this means the end user is not going to have to grant any permissions. Scripts we can leave disabled. And so now let's go back to the Managed App Config tab, and I'm going to toggle this switch on, which reveals some configuration options which allow us to pre-configure this with the values from our JSON. A lot of this I'm just going to leave as it is. I'll scroll down to default sync interval. Now this is optional, you can adjust this. If I put 30 in here, for example, Contactzilla Sync will sync every 30 minutes. Let's scroll down a bit more, and I have 5 fields to fill in here. I'm going to pull up my downloaded Contactzilla JSON file. And let's start by copying and pasting the organization name, which is the name of my Contactzilla team. And you can also paste that into the managed by field. And then next, I'll take the email address from the JSON here and the password. And the account name is simply my address book name. So I'm happy with that. We can leave all the other settings and then hit save. We're looking pretty good now. We just have one step remaining to get this address book onto the devices, and that is to assign this app policy to a group. So hit save and assign, and I can find my group here, Skyline Field Devices, and hit assign. So on the device's next check-in, Contactzilla Sync will be installed and the contact will be delivered onto the device. If you want to test this now, let's force a check-in on these devices. So I'm going to go to Devices and pick my Android device and choose Check-in up here and confirm that, and then refresh the page here. So let's have a look on our test device, and I can see that Contactzilla Sync has been installed. I'll open that, and there is my Project Cascade Tower address book. The app will sync automatically based on the interval we configured earlier, but to kick things off, I'm going to hit this manual sync button here. So back over to the Contacts app, and depending on how you have accounts set up on your devices, you may need to go into the contact accounts by pressing the avatar here and selecting the new Contactzilla address book just here. If I click the hamburger menu, I can also view our labels. So let's, for example, take this engineers group and view the contacts in there. Let's head over to our Contactzilla dashboard and make a change to a contact and watch that update on our phone. I'm going to filter down to that engineers group by applying a label filter. And let's take the top contact here and make an edit to the name. Now we did set a sync interval when rolling out this address book of 30 minutes, so that will keep the address book nicely up to date. But if I want to test this now, I can go to the Contactzilla Sync app and manually sync. And we can see that that contact's name is updating already. If I want to deploy another address book to this device group, let's say for example I have some critical contacts that need adding, and we want to keep them separate. I'm going to select the address book here in Contactzilla, and then go to Device Connections once again. I'll choose Android, MDM User, Read Only for the access type, and this time I'll tick this optional feature here to add a lock emoji, so that end users know that these contacts are read-only. Number of device connections to match your rollout, and then create. I now have a new device connection for this address book, so I'm going to download the JSON file once again. So then back over to Soti, and we're going to make a small edit to our Contactzilla Sync policy. So I'll click on Policies and select my Contactzilla Sync policy. I'll click the pencil icon to edit, move to the Apps tab, and then choose the 3-dot menu and click Configure. Then it's back down to the Managed App Config tab on the left, and as I scroll down you can see the details we entered for our first address book. In order to deploy our second address book, I'm going to populate these Account To fields. So let's pull up our second newly downloaded JSON file and paste the details over. This time we only need the email address, password, and the account name is the address book name. So this time it is Critical Project Partners. Everything else can be left as is, and now I will hit save. And here I can just use the save now, as we have already assigned this policy. And finally, to see this in action, let's go to Devices and force a check-in. Over on the device, let's check Contactzilla Sync to see the new address book. And there it is. And now over to the Contacts app, and I can choose which address book I'm looking at by going to the avatar on the top right here. And although our Contactzilla address books were set to read-only for this deployment, if I do want to add a new contact with the plus icon here, I can choose to do that directly on the device, or on another account if preferable. And that's it. We have deployed 2 different contact lists to Android devices using Soti Mobicontrol. And if you'd like to try this yourself, you can start a free trial of Contactzilla using the link in the description below.